Welcome to Witness Wednesdays here on the Walk Boldly with Jesus podcast. I am your host, Katherine Duggan. However, each Wednesday, I will have a guest give their witness of how God is working in their lives. Hearing how God is working in other people's lives shows us how deeply He cares for each one of us individually. Listening to these experiences will help your faith grow. I am so blessed to be able to share these with you. Let's get started. Today's guest will be Robert LeBlanc. Robert is an author and a truck driver. His witness today is a small part of an interview he did on Ashland CTV a few years ago at the onset of COVID. I will place a link to the full interview in the show notes. It's only about 30 minutes long. Robert has seen miracles over the years, and then at one point, he decided he wasn't telling enough people about them. He wrote a book called Where Will You Plant Your Seed? Responding to the Word of God. Here is a brief description from the back of the book. Every Christian is called to learn and respond to the Word of God. We are called to share the faith, to love, to help, and to try and respond by walking the talk. These are some of the highlights within my journey. Some of it is unique. I have seen and shared some of the wonderful things that I've lived through and been a part of. I have developed a thirst for the Holy Scriptures and started a habit of not just reading them, but asking God to help me take it in. I respond to what I read and put it into action, not only changing my life, but helping some of those that I see in need. This witness today is just two of many examples that Robert has experienced. Hopefully, I will have Robert on the podcast again to share more of his wonderful stories. Take it away, Robert.
Currently, I'm a truck driver. I've been a truck driver, commercial truck driver for probably 25 years now. Several years back, I realized I wasn't telling enough people some of the wonders that I've seen within Christianity. And I decided to put it in a book. And I had no idea how hard it was to sell books, but it's in the Lord's timing. I've seen some wonderful things happen. I've also would really encourage people not just to see the prayers answered, but to get to know God better reading something like this. There are a lot of joyful stories in the book. One of my favorite, years ago, I was one of the ministries that I was part of. I was helping take people who could not get to church on their own to get to church. And I did that for 16 years, drove a 14-passenger van. And one day I saw an elderly couple putting their blind quadriplegic daughter into their van. They were pushing her up a ramp. And I approached them and I said, if you ever need a hand getting her to church, please let me know. I'd be happy to help her. Well, she called back sometime later and said she wanted to get to a Bible study. I told her I'd get home kind of late to be taking people to a Bible study, but I'd be happy to look for her. And she told me she was blind and quadriplegic, and I said, we're in a summer break right now, but once we get going again, be happy to find some place for you. And I said, but in the meantime, I'd be happy to read to you. And so she said, she had prayed for 2 years for somebody to read the Bible to her. And so I started reading her the New Testament, and I read it to her over the phone. And sometimes as I read the scriptures, I feel, I'm not quite living up to a particular thing. And I said, Vivian, would you please pray for me? We came across a little section about not lusting. And I said, would you please pray for me? And she did. And anyway, the next day I'm making a delivery to one of the customers in San Diego. It was a welding supply shop, and in their employee bathroom across from the toilet was a chair. It had several copies of Playboy. And my first thought was, Vivian does not have eyes to see. Who am I? And not that I haven't failed in that category since then, but I had the opportunity to, God was giving me the opportunity at that time to, if you want to grow in this area, here's, I've heard, people say, oh, don't pray for patience because, he'll give you opportunities to practice that patience. sometimes it's little things that touch people. You know, one time I was driving as a tractor trailer driver, and
Yep.
I usually eat in the late afternoon, and I saw this couple at the end of an alleyway. One of them's in a wheelchair, one of them is standing, and so I pulled over my truck and I walked back and I said, "Have you had anything to eat?" You know, because the guy, his hands were black like the microphone stand from grime, from being homeless and in a wheelchair. And he was double amputated, missing the lower part, below the knee on both legs. I said, "Have you had anything to eat?" And he said, "No." And so the woman that was with him was just a friend, and she went off to the nearby convenience store to get something.
Yeah.
And when she walked away, I said, "How did you get in the wheelchair?"
Right.
And he said, "Well, the double amputation and from complications from diabetes." He said, "I have a partial working lung from working the coal mines." And he continued to share awful things. I tuned out after about the second or third one, and I started to silently pray. I wasn't stretching out my hands. I was just,
Yeah.
just silently praying. And the woman came back up, had, returned from the convenience store, and he burst into tears.
Right.
And she apologizes for him, said, "Oh, you have to forgive, such and such, he's having a bad day." And she corrects her, or he corrects her and said, "I'm not having a bad day. I'm filled with joy." And he reached out, with his blackened hands, and he grabs hold of my hands and starts to kiss them. And I'm feeling some of the emotions that he's going through. And, to me, it was just a wonderful moment in time, and, I was kind of disappointed with the Lord because I was hoping for, a physical healing for him, but, God had other plans.
Yeah.
You've met people who go through life and every day is a drudgery and I'm pretty sure he's had a lot of those days, but to be filled with joy in that situation, that's a remarkable moment.
Thank you so much, Robert, for sharing your interview with us. Hopefully, those that are listening will have time to check out the whole interview. We appreciate you putting the things you have seen into a book. I believe there is no better way to build the faith in people than to share the stories of how we have seen our good Father working in our lives and the lives of others. I hope those who are listening will check out your book. I hope you continue to get the word out, as the world needs to hear more about the miracles these days, especially because we hear so often about the negative things going on in the world. Thank you, Robert, and I hope we will be hearing from you again soon. We have all seen God working in our lives. However, we might not all be aware it is God working in our lives. This is why it's so important we start talking about it more. The more we share our experience, the more people will understand how God works and how much He truly loves us. If you would be willing to share any experience you've had of how God has worked or is working in your life, please email me at Catherine@findingtruenorthcoaching.com. And that's CATHERINE at findingtruenorthcoaching.com. Or just click on the link below. It won't take up much of your time, and your story could be just the story that someone needs to hear today. Prayerfully consider sharing. Everyone has a story, and the world needs to hear them. I look forward to spending time with you again tomorrow, and I will have another witness for you next Wednesday. Have a blessed day.